Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Treat others as you want to be treated. It's the golden rule. It is a shared ethical standard across every religious tradition that I can think of, and we probably all learned it in kindergarten, even if we didn't come from a religious tradition, didn't we? We all know that we're called to be kind. We're called to treat others as we want to be treated. But I wonder if we ever really stop and think about what that means. How do we want to be treated? So let's pause for a moment and consider it. And when you think of something, just call it out. How do we want to be treated in life? With respect. To be heard. With kindness. To be accepted.
The benefit of the doubt.
Given the benefit of the doubt.
To be safe.
To be safe. To be given grace.
To be understood.
To be understood. To be forgiven. To be loved. Yeah. To be liked. Yeah. Yes. Right? I think that as human beings, we desire to be listened to. Right? Even if by the time we finish what we're saying, we're like, man, I don't even agree with me. We want somebody to listen to what we have to say, to show us that basic respect and kindness, to listen when we're talking. We want people who can handle the whole of us, the good and the bad, right? So we just get to be who we are, not pretend, not play games. We want people who can follow along with our strengths and accept our weaknesses, but not define us by those weaknesses. We want people who can show up and try to meet our needs. They're not always going to be able to, but try to offer a little kindness in good times and in bad. But I think that we take this word kindness and we diminish it. We make it very anemic when the scriptures really don't at all. When we talk about kindness, we tend to make it about being nice and polite, don't we? Kindness is what little children do for one another before they know better. Right? Nice and polite. That's what we've been taught to be. And by that, we usually mean don't talk back, don't raise your voice, don't say anything negative ever, don't rock the boat. Right? We are taught to go with the flow, even if the flow is considerably unjust and unkind to whole lots of people. That is not biblical kindness at all. And if we have defined that kindness in that way as nice and polite, no, that's not Christianity. That is not what Jesus asks us to do. He asks us to do something radically difficult and challenging. He says, love and give of yourself to everyone all the time, no matter what they're giving to you. Don't wait on the world to be kind. You do it first. You don't have the option of just responding the way the world is giving, right? It's not a be nice to the people that are nice, be nasty to the people that are nasty. No. Jesus says it has to come from a different source, a higher source, God, who offers kindness continually. And this kindness that we're meant to offer, we offer it especially to, he says, enemies. We might want to think of it as opponents, right? Offer it especially to our opponents because it is the one thing that has the power to transform us. Now, there's something in our human nature that doesn't like that. We're like, they don't deserve it. But God doesn't give us what we deserve. God gives us what we need. And then he tells us to go out and do likewise. And it turns out that it's not just our Christian faith or the Jewish faith that affirms this. Here's what Lao Tzu said about this. If a person seems wicked, don't cast him away. Awaken him with your words. Elevate him with your deeds. Repay his injury with your kindness. Do not cast him away. Cast away his wickedness. Kindness as the response to wickedness. I'm not sure we even believe that this is a good strategy anymore, to be honest. Now, here in our church over the last couple of months, we have started to get some, you might call it hate mail, some really negative posts on social media, things suggesting, that our position of affirming the LGBTQ community is not only not good, some have called it satanic. And I have heard from talking to our social media coordinator that this is happening in all of the churches that she's serving. And she shared one particular comment with me this past week that I thought was really striking. This person said, "I bet you're really polite, but do you know how to confront evil?" Now, if this person was making a distinction between politeness and real kindness, like I was before, okay, but I doubt that that's what they were thinking. I think they were thinking that we people of faith are just too nice to deal with reality, right? It's a harsh, evil, bad world out there, so we've got to be harsher, bigger, badder, and uglier to deal with it. That's not what Jesus taught. Jesus taught kindness. And the biblical Hebrew word for this kindness is hesed. When we quote Micah 6:8, what does the Lord require of us but to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with our God? That word is hesed. Hesed is used 250 times in the Hebrew Bible. It's very nuanced, it's complex, and just a single word doesn't really translate all of the things that it means. Sometimes hesed means the concern that we will have for others, the emotional response that we will have to people, particularly people in need. And in that case, it's usually translated as compassion. When that compassion leads us to take action to help others, to care for them in times of need. That's hesed as translated kindness. Sometimes the Bible talks about a kindness that is offered to people who don't deserve it. I think that's what Jesus was talking about when he tells us to reach out to those who aren't offering kindness first. And that word is translated as mercy. And then there's another way of thinking about hesed, and it's about commitment in relationship. And then it is usually discussed as steadfast love and loyalty. The Hebrew Bible describes God's relationship to us in that way all the time. God offers us compassion, kindness, mercy, steadfast love, and loyalty. And then God says, go share it with one another. And it's not optional. What does the Lord require of you? We are required to offer kindness as followers of the God of Hesed, because it really does change things. Kindness, real kindness, is contagious. It's so surprisingly good that it wakes you up and you see things in different ways and you feel compelled to go share it with someone else. Where do you see kindness in the world? Are there places that you go because it feels good, there's a kindness there, or maybe particular people that seem especially kind to you? I'm going to say that one of the places that I experience kindness very routinely is in the Safeway grocery store across the park. I'm not joking. I see extra mile, extraordinary kindness there. There are a couple of cashiers that I will literally, there could be 7 people in line here and 2 people over there. I'll go wait in the 7 people line just because I like saying hi to them. They are that kind. They build community with the people in line. They'll ask about your life. They'll share something about their family. They'll ask about what you're doing over the weekend. Sometimes I get good remedies for back pain from some of them. They have a way of building community. And then sometimes they really take that kindness to all new levels. It was a couple of months ago, I was in line behind a mother and her teenage daughter. I don't know, she looked maybe 13 or 14. She had, I'm not sure what, but I would call it some kind of a sensory perception problem, that she was wearing noise-canceling headphones, and no, she was not listening to music. She was just wearing headphones. She had gloves on, and she was holding a teddy bear very close to her chest, right? It made her feel safer and more comfortable in that environment. And at the end, as they were checking out, she held out her teddy bear for Eric to say hello to, right? Just silently held out the teddy bear. Now, he could have just said, "Oh, that's sweet," but he did a lot more. He went around the corner, he got right up to the teddy bear, and he started to touch it, to say how adorable it was, to ask her questions about the bear. And while he was doing that, the store manager came over with a balloon for this girl, and they all started to talk together. It was so beautiful. It didn't cost anybody anything, but it filled all of us up with the sense of how powerful it really is to just pay attention with a little bit of kindness. Now, we can all say, okay, right, that cynical part of us goes, anybody can be kind to a kid with a bear. This same person, and another time when I was there, we're just talking, and all of a sudden he yelled out, "Hey, I'm watching you." And I was like, oh, is there something bad happening? And he's like, "Yeah, I think those people over there are about to shoplift." And then he pauses and he goes, "You know, I really hope I'm not wrong about that. This job makes you confront your biases and your prejudices all the time, and sometimes I get it wrong, and I need to admit when I'm wrong. I sure wish our politicians would admit it when they get it wrong from time to time. It would make things a lot better." Same guy, still kindness. Basic human kindness changes things. We know it does at an interpersonal level, but I think many of us have given up on the idea that something as simple as kindness could really impact our culture, could impact our divisive, rancorous speech toward one another, and this political climate that is just so antagonistic. But I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in his way, so I am not giving up on the possibility, the hope, the promise that kindness really could be a first step in changing the world around us. Kindness does not solve all of our differences and disagreements. Of course it doesn't. It's not supposed to. We're supposed to disagree, especially when it comes to the big issues that affect us as a community, as a culture. Kindness is about how we address those issues, how we speak to one another, how we disagree. When we have real differences and we can discuss those differences respectfully while believing that the other human being on the other side is an actual human being, our differences can help us come up with even better alternative solutions. But when we just go like this and hate each other, we go nowhere. And we all want better, don't we? In fact, we do. There was a poll done in 2022, and it found that 75% of people across the political spectrum really, really want kindness. 75% agreed with this statement. To restore peace and unity, we need leaders to model kindness and understanding, even with people they strongly disagree with. Leaders must show the way forward. Thing is, I don't think we can wait on our leaders anymore. We have to model the kindness. And who better than us? We say that we are followers of the pioneer and perfecter of the faith. So why aren't we modeling this kindness to the world around us? I think kindness is the key to getting past this moment in history of this hyperpolarization in which we can't seem to see much goodness or common ground in one another. Some of us in this room are too young to remember a time in which it was ever different. My kids are some of those kids, right? They've never seen anything but in our culture and in our political discourse. But many of us in this room do remember a time when it was a little bit different, when you could disagree, when you could be friends across the aisle, right? There are examples of this all over. One of my favorite examples goes back to the early 80s, to then President Ronald Reagan and his friendship with the Democratic Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill. Now, they were truly, genuinely, really good friends. After Ronald Reagan was shot, Tip O'Neill was one of the first people that went to visit him in the hospital, one of the first people that President Reagan allowed to come into the hospital. And even though he was still in the midst of deep recovery, he lit up when he saw Tip O'Neill coming into the room. And of course, there were lots of security there. So this is witnessed. This really happened, right? The Democratic Speaker of the House got down on his knees, held hands with the Republican President of the United States, and prayed Psalm 23 with him. Truly, that happened because they were friends. They had a mutual respect, and it was shared. So 5 years later, when Tip O'Neill retired after 34 years in the House, he asked President Ronald Reagan to share a speech at his banquet. I mean, you can listen to this entire speech on YouTube, of course, because you can listen to anything on YouTube. But here are a few highlights. Right? Ronald Reagan began by talking about what they had in common, right? It's always a good place to start. And of course, he joked that it was inevitable that they would have a standoff, because what else would happen when two Irishmen met in the Oval Office? He admitted that they'd had their political disagreements, a lot of them, and he said it was all history, and then he joked that he couldn't recall it anyway. Y'all remember the Iran-Contra hearings of the early 80s? Yeah. He said that they could kid one another because it was a sign of their affection and their friendship, and that it was a true honor to call him friend. And then he said, this is a real quote, "The fact of their friendship was a testament to their politics and our country, where we have it out on the issues, not one another." Wow. He went on to salute O'Neill's dedication and devotion to the country and said that this man, the leader of the opposition, had been a vital and forceful part of our country's tradition. That's what good politics should be about. That's what good community is about. It is about standing up for what you believe is just and right and kind, not compromising your values and ideals, but also not compromising the way we treat one another with kindness, compassion, respect. These days are not gone. We can do this. We can lead the way in this because God requires it of us in our homes, in our churches, in our schools, in our grocery stores, everywhere we go. This is who we can be because we followed Jesus. He was surprisingly good at radical kindness. We probably all have some stories that stand out for us. Some of mine are the story of Jesus with the woman at the well. What incredibly surprising kindness. A foreign country, a hated country, a woman he wasn't supposed to speak to, a woman who worshiped with a religion that was also supposedly foreign and wrong, and yet Jesus said, I see God in you, and together we will worship in spirit and truth. The man born blind, whom everyone had abandoned because they believed his blindness was a sign of his sin. And Jesus said, no, it's not his sin. And he made the man see again. The woman caught in adultery, and everyone so willing not just to condemn, but to kill her. And what did Jesus say? Those of you without sin, cast the first stone. And everyone went home with something new to think about and a little bit more kindness inside. Surprising, generous, radical kindness. So our challenge this week is to find one place, one person, one moment where we can intentionally, proactively share some God-breathed kindness. And notice what happens in us and with that other person. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Kindness. The Lord requires it. Amen.